are all about equipping families to stand firm on their faith in this culture. And so we really believe, we have a ministry, my husband, Matt, and I have a ministry called Genuine Family Ministries. And we just really believe that it's so important to teach the biblical worldview, and then also to make sure that our kids are equipped to understand the postmodern worldview that is the prevailing worldview in our culture today. I think it's easy to look out in culture and go, oh my gosh, we're just obsessed with, sexual ideology and gender ideology and those things. But to really understand the framework of what it's built on, I think is what's really going to help equip our kids to be able to identify the ideas that are truth and to identify those that are cultural lies. And so we're really passionate about it. When I went to the Colson Center for Christian Worldview, it's an intensive program that I went through back in 2020. And when I went through that program, I understood that God was really calling us to speak biblical truth with love in our culture. And when I went through that program, I started to understand that biblical worldview was such an important element that we were really missing in terms of our conversations or with our students and even in our homes. Because what I realized was it was putting a name to what I was already seeing in my conversations with women. So I would go out to coffee and be talking to these women, and I was finding out that, more than half probably believed that homosexuality was okay. And they were Christians. And I just didn't understand the discrepancy of like how we would have such different ideas, both calling ourselves Christians. How do we have such different ideas about what was okay and what was okay from a Christian perspective and a biblical perspective? And it really came down to worldview, and it really came down to the worldview ideas that we even in the church were starting to believe. And it's because these postmodern ideas have come into the church. And then on top of that, many of us Christians, if you're anything like me, did not grow up with a solid understanding of scripture, did not understand blood atonement, did not understand solid theology, was not discipled. And so now many of us who were in that situation in the church are now raising this next generation, and we don't have necessarily the solid foundation and tools that we need. And so these ideas continue to slip into the church. And so we just really believe that in order to protect our kids from these ideas and to preserve the faith, that we really have to focus on what is biblical worldview and then the postmodern worldview, and be able to make sure our kids can discern between the two.